countdown is on.
2nd and 23. Deep shot for the end zone. Touchdown! They get it all back. Jerron Glover, a chance to tie the game with the extra point. Right back to the air, dangerously deflected. Was that intercepted? It was. Spartans take it right back, and it is Charles Bradley who's able to scoop that up off the turf.
Childs looking to follow his blocking. Childs gets away, so slippery. Aiden Childs makes another man miss inside the 30.
Childs lets it fly, and it is caught for the touchdown. Montorie Foster, and Michigan State does finish inside the red zone.
McNamara unloads, picked off. Nakai Martinez still on his feet. Martinez finally caught up at the 30.
It's time for 25 teams in 25 grums.
Happy to be joined by Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate as we preview Michigan State. We're back into the Nebraska schedule. Of course, this game will happen at midseason for both squads. Stephen joining us in the Prairie Flower Casino Zone hotline. Stephen, good afternoon. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Stephen, was 5 wins last year? Did it actually seem like that was better than how the season played out?
No, not really. I mean, I would say it was about what was expected. Now, like the way it played out, though, I don't think inspired a lot of folks, to be honest. I mean, if before game one, if I said, hey, they're going to go 5-7, I think a lot of people would have said, okay, that makes sense. But then the way it played out, like you get Rutgers at home, the final game of the year, to play for a bowl game. Haven't been to a bowl game since 2021. And they got their doors blown off at home, by Rutgers, who was solid. But, so like that left a bad taste. They beat Iowa in probably their best performance of the season, and then go to Michigan the next week. A good quarter and a half, lose control right before halftime, lose that game. And then that was kind of it in terms of like the air going out of the balloon for the rest of the season. There wasn't a lot of positive moments after that. And so it was kind of like a thud, to the finish line. And it definitely wasn't like ending on an upswing where it's like, okay, hey, we're not in a bowl game or we didn't do that great this year, but at least there's this, and this to look forward to. But yeah, it was kind of a slow, just march to an uninspiring finish by the end last year.
Yeah, Stephen, along those lines, you mentioned that win over Iowa. They scored 32 points. They pick up their 4th win of the year after a 3-game losing streak that included real tough matchups to Ohio State and Oregon. And then they go on that 1-4 finish. The offense really struggles, kind of using that now to transition into 2025. How much of the struggles late were on Aiden Childs? And I wonder what you think that can mean for him at quarterback in 2025.
Yeah, he actually got his second half was better than his first half. So I'll try not to go super deep here, but like Aiden Childs kind of was the story of last offseason than Jonathan Smith coming in as a new head coach, because Jonathan Smith's kind of just a low key guy. I mean, his name is literally John Smith. Like he's just kind of nondescript, to be honest. He doesn't like make a lot of waves or headlines. So, and Aiden Childs is the opposite. He's a very much a magnetic, lively personality. He will say some things that grab headlines and whatnot. And people were just so excited that he came over as a former 4-star recruit, as a guy who things behind DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State in 2023 as a true freshman. They played him in, I think, 9 games. It was very clear he was the future. He had a huge ceiling. And the fact that he came over here to sort of jumpstart this new program, like he was the story. So then you come into last year, and I felt like he kind of played like that, like I am the man, right? Like I am the program. Not like in a cocky way necessarily, but I just think he tried to be the guy right out of the box. And he was a first-time starter. He was 18 years old when he began this season. So he just wasn't ready to be what I think he thought he was ready to be, and definitely what all the fans wanted him to be right out of the gate. Turnovers were an issue. Discipline was an issue. But anyway, circling back to your question, second half of the season, he really tightened up, at least in the turnover department. So I don't think he personally had a big impact on that final stretch. I mean, yeah, he had his moments, of course, but I wouldn't point to him as like the biggest reason. When you bring up that Iowa game, the reason that stands out is because And the way they ran the ball, that was their best rushing performance of the season against Iowa. Traditionally is a very strong defensive program. Michigan State hadn't run the ball at a healthy clip basically all year. A couple games here or there, but then they came out of a bye week, had Iowa at home, and just pushed them around and ran the ball in a way that we had not seen really before, and not much after that. So that's kind of the thing that I think that let them down near the end. They were really decimated by injuries on defense specifically. Didn't have a lot of playable depth there, and that showed up. But then they never, at season long, the run game was a weakness. And then it was like they were under a spell, that Iowa game. And then right around halftime of the Michigan game the following week, the spell wore off, and they turned back into who they really were, where they can't run the ball. They couldn't protect Childs very well. And that's just a road to nowhere, offensively when you're bad up front. So those were the two biggest things I would say that led to their issues last year, were defensive depth and injuries, and then just an offensive line and a run game that weren't performing.
Stephen Brooks of Spartans Tailgate previewing the Spartans here in 25 teams in 25 grums. Michigan State, among the Big Ten schools, was one of more aggressive teams in the portal, and one of the areas they definitely looked at was to add more speed and athleticism at wide receiver. How does that group look coming into 25?
Yeah, I'd say wide receiver is their strongest position on the team. They have it's led by a guy named Nick Marsh, who's a sophomore. He's a budding star. I think he has all Big Ten potential this year. I think he has all American potential by the end of his career. He was a 4-star kid coming out of high school from the Detroit area. Big recruiting win for them to get him and keep him, and then keep him again this offseason to bring him back as a sophomore. I think he's going to become a household name in the Big Ten this fall. I really do. He's a super talented kid, big-bodied guy, but not just sort of a jump ball specialist. He's got some wiggle to him. Now they want to move him around the formation and make him, sort of more versatile and dangerous with the things they can do with him. But it's not just him, though. He's a star, but the supporting cast around him is so much better, and that's going to help him and them and Aiden Childs. It's just going to be a rising tide lifts all boats situation, I think, because they really weren't that dangerous around him last year. Now they're bringing in Omari Kelly from Middle Tennessee State, who was an all-conference guy down there in the Conference USA. I think first team as a receiver and second team as a returner. He's going to walk right in and start for him, and pretty dangerous number 2, I think. Krishan McCray is a kid from Kent State that they picked up, and Kent State was a abysmal team last year. He was kind of the only offense they had, and he still produced pretty well. Big play guy, sort of a slot build, wiggly, shifty, explosive with the ball in his hands. So he's going to be an interesting guy to watch as well. Rodney Bullard's a guy they got from Valdosta State at the D2 level, 1,000-yard receiver a year ago. They really like him. And then Evan Boyd from up the road at Central Michigan, actually went to high school at East Lansing High, literally minutes from campus. And he's another big-bodied guy. He's like 6'4", 215-ish, 220. I don't have it right in front of me, but big physical receiver who moves better than they thought. So, yeah, they're way more dangerous at the wide receiver 2, 3, and 4 positions this year, which I think is also going to help their tight ends. It's a very tight end-centric offense, and that really wasn't a huge factor last year. So you're not going to be able to load up necessarily on a Nick Marsh or just shut down the tight ends underneath or just do, it's really going to be a pick your poison situation offensively, I think, because they've gotten a lot better at the skill talent spots.
Stephen, on the other side of the ball, you had a great story earlier this week about 8 position battles to follow in August, and you had that number about the sacks where they went 6 games in 24 without having a sack in a game. They only finished with 19 on the year. So, obviously this is going to be an emphasis. It's one thing to make it an emphasis. It's another to actually execute on it. Do you think that they're going to have the answers to those questions with getting more pressure on the quarterback this year?
I don't know. I mean, that would be my number one concern heading into the season right now, is just where is the pass rush going to come from? I look at it on paper, and I don't see how they upgraded their personnel there, quite honestly. They lost probably their best defensive tackle from last year to graduation. They lost their best rush end, pass rusher. I mean, the guy only had 4 or 5 sacks, but he was still the best of a lacking group. So they're starting new in a sense, and some of the spots on the D-line, and they didn't bring, whereas like I just said, receiver, they made a huge jump, I thought, talent-wise. Offensive line, same thing. They got a nice infusion of talent there that are really going to help them. Defensive backs got some guys that are going to help them. And they got some guys at that D end that are going to play, but again, I don't see them. They're not guys yet, and maybe they're just unproven hidden gems. That's possible. We've all been fooled before, I guess. But just on paper, I don't really see how the personnel is any better than a year ago when they had that sackless streak, and that was an issue. So yeah, that's a major concern for me as we head into this year is how are they going to generate pass rush? And I'm a decent fan of the back seven personnel. But as we all know, like if you're not getting adequate pressure, then it doesn't matter. You could have Ed Reed, Champ Bailey, whoever you want back there, and they're not going to look that good. So I do worry that could be an Achilles heel for the whole defense, where they're just not making these quarterbacks sweat at all, have all day to throw, and they're just able to play 7-on-7 out there, and those back seven guys have no chance. So that's kind of where I'm at with the defense. I think it's a big concern until proven otherwise.
Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate. Speaking of the back seven, and we're finally cycling through the end of the COVID year, guys. But Darius Snow, he's going to be in his 6th season. Had a really good second year, but then had a terrible leg injury. It's been a slow time coming back, but he's back for a 6th season. Wayne Matthews is back in the linebacking core. He's here for a 5th year. There's a lot of experience at linebacker. Is this potential strength of the defense?
Potentially, yeah. They have some options. Not a ton, even though you just listed how old they are, not a ton of experience, actually. Like Darius Snow was a nickel to begin his career. When he had that really strong 2021, he was their nickel. And then the next year they bumped him up to linebacker. And then first half of the first game is when he had that massive leg injury that you mentioned and set him out basically for 2 years. So now he's kind of like a space, overhang linebacker for him. Really smart kid, but just hasn't played a ton, even though as a 6-year guy. I mean, a good amount. He's not like a rookie out there, but just not as much as you might expect there. Jordan Hall is a junior, former 4-star kid that they're expecting to step forward as their new Mike. He came in with a lot of hype. He looks the part. He's been a great leader for him, great locker room guy, but just hasn't been the sharpest football player. Been probably better athlete than football player to this point. Now it's like, hey man, you're a junior. The job's yours. He's going to be the mic. He's going to be making the calls. So they're putting a lot on him to really take a step and sort of start living up to that billing. Wayne Matthews, like you mentioned, was a tackling machine at Old Dominion. I think he was top 10 nationally his last year there in individual tackles before he came over here. Got hurt near the end of last year and missed part of that and missed part of this spring, but the expectations are high for him. A good cover guy at that level. And then there's just a bunch of guys below those sort of 3 known names that they but we just haven't seen. So, but there's definitely faith within the coaching staff and within the building that they have options there and that they have a decent depth of talent. So just some guys that we haven't seen yet. But I know defensive coordinator Joe Rossi thinks he's got as much depth as he's had in several years. Of course, this is only his 2nd season here, but he's a big fan of the way that room is stacked up right now.
Steven, last one for me before we get to the rapid fire, and this goes back to John's question to kick off the interview. What's the vibe heading into year 2 for Jonathan Smith, just given that last year got off to a start that had a lot of people, I imagine, dreaming of a bowl game and then that really poor finish?
Yeah, well, things kind of changed around June. Other than, from the end of last season up until June, it was just kind of stale, dead air, no movement, no juice. It was kind of just a quiet, like I said, I just kind of imagine no air movement, just a barren plain. There was just, it's hard to explain, but there was some concern amongst the fans for sure. There just wasn't any juice or anything to hold on to and give people hope. And then June came and they picked up 19 commitments, I think, basically filled up their recruiting class. Now, of course, that's not going to help them this year. But it was just a shot in the arm for the program. They were making headlines. They were doing things. There were positive developments. Pretty much nothing that happened after the season until then was positive, or at least overwhelmingly so. So I think now people are getting back on board and saying, okay, look, these guys can recruit. The sky's not falling. Let's give them another shot, because there just wasn't anything to sort of put your claws into and be okay, at least we have this, or at least it's trending this way with some time. Up until that June recruiting surge, there was nothing like that. But I think that restored a lot of people's faith, and people have taken a breath, the longer they've been away from it, to sort of understand, hey, these things do take time. This staff, for the most part, has a track record from Oregon State where it did take time. Now, that was a different era, of course, where they really started building it out there. But I think people are back to being a little more patient, just sort of understanding where they are. Look, like Indiana scrambled people's brains last year. Like, hey, look what they did. They just brought a new coach. Why can't we go do that? Why can't we go to the playoffs? So, Kurt Cignetti owes a lot of people some explanations, like in terms of adjusting expectations and screwing with people's heads. But that's kind of the vibe. I mean, look, nobody thinks this is going to be a sneaky playoff team or anything. Nobody thinks this is going to be a contender. But people absolutely want to see progress. And like I said, just sort of some tangible hope, something to grab onto that moving into next year and the year after, that things are pointed in the right direction. So to me, that's a bowl game at a minimum, at 6-6 at a minimum. I know no one's throwing a parade for that, but that is progress. That is getting back to the postseason for the first time since 21. And then, I think they could, on the high end, win 7 or 8 games, maybe 9 if there's a miracle, I guess. That's got to be the ceiling probably, though, but more likely 6, 7, maybe 8 wins is probably what they're looking at, and that would be progress. And then, you move the ball down the field and try to obviously top that in 2026. But that's kind of the state of things right now. People are still being patient. I'd say there's a tinge of concern long-term about whether this is going to work, probably because of some, being poisoned by Indiana a little bit and whatnot, and just not feeling like the program, every year it feels like the program's slipping further and further, which it is, technically from those glory days of 10 years ago. You had the start and stop with Mel Tucker where it's like, okay, we're back. Oh, no, we're not. No, we're not at all. So there's like that anxiety sort of bubbling under the surface, you can tell, where it's like, are we just going to be cast into the abyss forever? Or is this ever going to happen? Are they going to spring back up? So I would say that's sort of the lay of the land. A good amount of patience, not unlimited for sure. And then just, I do think there's a grounded sense of like what this team is this year, and just like it's like go surprise us somewhere, go overachieve somewhere, go beat Michigan or scare them, go scare USC on the road or something like that. Go play Penn State close at home, something to sort of inspire is really what people want to see.
All right, Nick, get your finger on the button. It is time to wrap up this interview with Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate with some rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
You do not throw rocks at a man who's got a machine gun.
Rapid fire.
Most important player, Stephen, this year for Michigan State?
Stanton Ramil, their starting left tackle. Their tackle depth is not great. It's getting better. It's been a weakness in the program for a while. I think he's got NFL potential. He started most of last season as a first-time starter, as a redshirt freshman, now as a redshirt sophomore. I think he's going to take a step into being a upper-tier Big Ten type of player there. They don't have a lot of other guys behind him that could fill in.
Who's the player you're most interested to see how they contribute this year?
Oh, wow. Oh, man, so many. Probably these new receivers. Krishan McCray is a guy I'm really curious about. Like I said, at Kent State, was on an awful team. He's kind of the only weapon they had, so you go into every game knowing, like, hey, we got to stop that guy. He's undersized, but he still made plays, even throughout those circumstances. So, and he was a little banged up in the spring, but he's got big play potential, and so he could be an exciting player to watch this fall.
You may have answered this, but the minimum expectation for this year's team is what?
Yeah, minimum has to be 6-6. It's not like Jonathan Smith's going to get fired over 5-7 or something. It'd have to be a total disaster and probably like some off-field stuff for him to lose his job this year. But barring disaster, he's going to be back next season. But people need to see 6-6, and I think that's absolutely within reason.
The thing you love most about this year's team is what?
Oh, the skill players, the receivers, the passing games potential, receivers, tight end, quarterback. I think Aiden Giles is an NFL player. He had some growing pains last year. He's got some things he needs to tighten up, but physically, tools wise, the guy checks every box. He can be extremely impressive when he's at his best, and he can make you pound your head on the table when he's at his worst. So gotta shorten that distance up between those, obviously. But with Nick Marsh is an NFL guy. I like those other complementary receivers we talked about. The passing game, I think, could be pretty dangerous.
The percentage chance you give Michigan State of coming into Lincoln and winning?
30.
30. Regular season record prediction this year.
I am at 6-6. I think I see 5 wins sort of getting out of bed. I think they should win their first 3. I think they should beat UCLA at home, and then they have Maryland to end the season at Ford Field in Detroit. Those are 5 they have to win to me. Penn State is a no shot to me. So then everything else I feel like is some degree of point flip. Obviously going to Lincoln is going to be hard. Going to USC is going to be hard. They have to go to Iowa and to Minnesota. I think those are more coin flippy, So a lot of toss-ups in the middle there, but I'm at 6-6 right now.
Pick to win the Big Ten.
I have Penn State beating Illinois.
Whoa, he's got Illinois. There we go. All right, we got a different one there. Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate. Stephen, we really appreciate it. Great look ahead to Michigan State. We look forward to that matchup in Week 6.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
You bet.
Thank you,
Stephen
Steven.
Brooks of Spartan Tailgate joining us here on the Prairie Flower Casino Zone Hotline as part of 25 teams and 25 grums. So let's take a peek at Michigan State. Thanks to our good friend K Ford Ratings, Kelly Ford. First 3 games, dare I say, winnable games. Boston College was the toughie in the middle, which might be an interesting, and I know Boston College is different from where they were last year, but that might be a fascinating watch for Nebraska as they look ahead, given that Nebraska played Boston College in the bowl last year. And then the back-to-back road games. The good news for Sparty is they get the bye week, the idle week in the middle, but USC in week 4. And then they start that October, into November stretch with 3 out of 5 on the road. And the 3 games on the road are Lincoln, Bloomington, Indiana, and Minneapolis. And in between, it's not like much of a break. It's UCLA and Michigan, of course, the rivalry game at home before the finish up after another idle week in Week 11. Penn State at home at Iowa, and then taking on the Maryland Terps. So,
brutal schedule.
It is. It's a tough schedule, and as K Ford has them, he's got them at 4.9 wins.
Yeah, so not reaching the number that he said. He said 6 wins is the necessary number.
Yeah, 32% according to K Ford of getting to 6 wins. It is a tough schedule for Michigan State, but like Steven, offensively, Michigan State could be fine. It's whether or not they're able to stop anybody.
Yeah, and that's interesting because Kelly Ford, his numbers have the defense being at 34 and the offense being at 105. So the math says that he disagrees with Steven. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. John, how about this? And you mentioned the schedule, a lot of winnable games to start. All those games to begin the year, those first 3 are at home. After that, they only play 3 home games the rest of the year. And I know the neutral site game at Ford Field late is going to feel like a home game, but they only have 3 more after September, and where they alternate essentially the rest of the year, road, home, except for that 2-game road swing to finish up September and go into October. It's going to be tough. USC is going to be a tough game. Nebraska, as we talked about, is going to be a tough game. Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Iowa. Gosh, man, almost all these games. Depending on how you view UCLA and Maryland, it's a pretty brutal schedule. So I think it's going to be tough for the good vibes to continue into year 3 for Jonathan Smith. And if the way that Steven was talking about it is right, he might enter the season next year very much on the hot seat. And when we're doing all sorts of hot seat activities, he might be one of the first names that we talk about going into 26.
Yeah, you look at that stretch between Week 4 and Week 13. Only 1 game, according to K Ford's game percentages, would be a coin flip, and that's UCLA at 49%. Everything else is 32% or less. So a really, really tough stretch for Michigan State.